According to legend, the renowned Greek lyric poet Simonides of Chios was dining at the home of a wealthy nobleman one night when he received word that two young men were waiting outside with a message for him. Simonides stepped outside, mere moments before the roof of the banquet hall caved in, killing everyone inside. The extent of the destruction was so great that the family and friends of the deceased guests despaired of being able to identify their bodies. But Simonides found that if you pictured the spatial layout of the hall, he could mentally walk around it and recall the names of the guests seated in each place. In this way, he helped identify the unfortunate diners. From this experience, Simonides deduced that remembering factual information is easiest if we tie it to a physical location we are familiar with. Today, we know this technique as the method of loci. Here's how constructing a memory palace can help you memorize information and recall it with ease. From the time we learn to walk, we start building up spatial memories, these recollections of the layouts of physical spaces and their relationships to the objects in them. These memories tend to form fast and stick around for a long time. The method of loci hijacks our innate aptitude for remembering physical spaces, using it to help us remember other kinds of information with greater ease. Although it may seem as if people who manage unusual feats of memory have unusual innate capabilities, like this 4-time USA memory champion, much of the available evidence suggests that that isn't the case. Instead, they tend to simply use innate capabilities in unusual, creative ways. In the book Moonwalking with Einstein, journalist Joshua Foer discovers this for himself while investigating memory championships. After contestants tell him anyone could do what they do with the right training, Foer sets his sights on the USA Memory Championship and goes on to win. Foer's journey started by researching memory and its physical effects on the brain. Scientists had recently discovered that your brain is much like a muscle, and that making it work could actually make it grow by creating new pathways at a cellular level. Does that mean the brain of a mental athlete is different from that of a normal person? Not necessarily. Foer found research indicating memory specialists simply use different parts of their brains for recalling information. They converted the information into a visual form and positioned it in a spatial location. A memory palace is an ancient mnemonic device that leverages the way we find it easiest to recall information, spatially and visually. Say your memory palace is your childhood home. Take a moment to conjure images and memories of that place. We're going to stick to the outside of the house. Mentally walk from the road to your front door, trying to remember as many details as possible. Let's imagine you want to remember to buy some steaks on the way home. Now, put the steaks exactly how they look in the grocery store on the front porch. Got it? Okay, now let's try to make the steaks into something more memorable. How about a cow sitting on your front porch, but not like a cow would, like a human would? Next, let's make them exaggeratedly chewing, but make it into bubblegum instead of grass. Now the cow is periodically blowing gigantic bubbles so big that you worry they might pop. Maybe think about the strange smell of bubblegum and cow mixed together. What would the cow's skin feel like? What would it feel like to have to pick bubblegum off of the cow's face? 4 hours from now, when you leave work to head home, you'll remember you had to pick something up from the grocery store. When you take a trip to your memory palace, walk up the drive and gaze at your front step, what do you think you are more likely to remember? The packaged steaks that you see all the time, or the gum-chewing cow we created? If you're trying to learn something more complex and important than a shopping list, it's possible to keep repeating this process until you've constructed an incredibly detailed memory palace with hundreds, if not thousands, of items. Or you might use multiple different locations for various purposes. You could also use a journey such as your walk to work or walk to the gym. No matter what, you want to make your mental image engage with the location as much as possible, and ideally involve multiple senses. Avoid placing multiple different items in parts of your memory palace that look too similar, such as identical dining room chairs and so on. The memory palace is a great way to recall a variety of things, but you will still hit a hard ceiling. And that ceiling conflicts with the Herculean amount of numbers some memory competitors can remember. So what's the trick? It turns out that there is a whole different tool just for recalling numbers. It's called PAO, Person, Action, Object. In this system, every 2-digit number from 00 to 99 is processed into a single image of a person performing an action. The number 34 might be Frank Sinatra, a person, crooning, which is an action, into a microphone, which is an object. Likewise, 13 might be David Beckham kicking a soccer ball. The number 79 could be Superman flying with a cape. And any 6-digit number, like say 34, 13, 79, can then be turned into a single image by combining the person from the first number with the action from the second and the object from the third. In this case, it would be Frank Sinatra kicking a cape. I don't know about you, but Frank Sinatra kicking a cape hasn't come to my mind before. It becomes a very powerful tool when you realize that you can use your stock images, quote unquote, as a sort of algorithm to generate a unique image from every number between 0 and 999,999. So this is cool and all, but you might be wondering, how does a memory palace actually work? When we're learning something new, it requires less effort if we connect it to something we already know, such as a physical place. That is known as elaborative encoding. Once we need to remember the information, we can walk around the palace and see the various pieces. We are pretty terrible at remembering things, and especially when these memories float freely in our heads. But our spatial memory is actually pretty decent. And when we give our memories some needed structure, we provide that missing order and context. For example, if you struggle to remember names, it can be helpful to link people you meet to names you already know. If you meet someone named Fred and your grandma has a cat named Fred, you could connect the two. Creating a multi-sensory experience in your head is the other part of the trick. In this case, you could imagine the sound of Fred meowing loudly. Memory specialists typically recommend mentally placing information within a physical space in ways that are weird and unusual. The stranger the image, the better. That's why we did the whole cow chewing the bubblegum and exploding on him. It helps you remember it more. Returning to the name example, it will probably stick better if you imagine Fred, the person, being chased by a giant version of Fred the cat, compared to just imagining them two next to each other. An important caveat is that the method of loci only helps you recall the specific information you used it to encode. While you might find it easier to use the technique the more times you repeat it, you're unlikely to see an overall improvement in your general memory. The memory palace reminds us of the importance of being mindful and paying attention to life. Forward takes it further, arguing that when we look at it critically, memory is a huge component of almost every aspect of our lives. He says how we perceive the world and how we act in it are products of how and what we remember. We're all just a bundle of habits shaped by our memories. And to the extent that we control our lives, we do so by gradually altering those habits, which is to say the networks of our memory. Our ability to find humor in the world, to make connections between previously unconnected notions, to create new ideas, to share in common culture, all these essentially human acts depend on memory. Now more than ever, as the role of memory in our culture erodes at a faster pace than ever before, we need to cultivate our ability to remember. Our memories make us who we are. We are a culmination of our experiences. How we process this information and encode it into something meaningful is intrinsically tied to our memory. Understanding how it works and how to use tools or tricks to make it better is a worthy endeavor.